Hello. Get ready to be transported to different eras by unraveling the fascinating stories of yesteryear. The Industrial Revolution, one of the most transformative periods in human history, marked a seismic shift in the way societies organized and economies operated. This revolution, which unfolded from the late 18th to the mid-19th century, dramatically altered the landscape of production, labor, and everyday life. In this comprehensive account, we will journey through the origins, key innovations, social upheavals, and long-term impacts of the Industrial Revolution, focusing on how it transformed agrarian societies into industrial powerhouses. Pre-industrial society. The pre-industrial society was predominantly agricultural, largely defined by subsistence farming and craftsmanship. This agrarian way of life, shaped over millennia, formed the backbone of societies around the world, from the vast plains of North America to the terraced hills of Asia and the fertile lands of Europe. In an agrarian society, the rhythm of life was dictated by the changing seasons and the demands of the land. Manual labor was an integral part of survival, and tasks such as sowing, reaping, and threshing were shared among the community members. Surpluses, when available, were stored for lean seasons or bartered for other goods in local markets. This self-sufficient way of life was largely communal and fostered a strong sense of locality and interdependence. The technological state of the world during this pre-industrial era was vastly different from what we know today. Instead of machinery and automated processes, traditional tools made from wood, bone, and later metal, powered by human or animal strength, were used to till the land and process harvested crops. Knowledge about tool creation, crop cultivation, and animal husbandry was transmitted orally across generations and was continuously improved upon, albeit slowly. The slow pace of technological advancement, coupled with localized solutions to problems, created a diversity of practices and knowledge across different regions. In Europe, particularly, society was shaped by the feudal system. The feudal system was a hierarchical socio-economic structure that emerged in the Middle Ages, characterized by hereditary nobility, fiefdoms, and serfdom. At the top of this hierarchy was the monarch, followed by nobles, knights, clergy, and at the bottom, serfs. Land, known as fief, was the primary means of wealth and was granted by the monarch to the nobility, known as lords, in return for loyalty and military service. These lords, in turn, allowed peasants or serfs to live on and work their lands. Although not slaves, serfs were bound to the land, unable to leave without the lord's consent. They provided labor, a portion of their produce, and occasionally other services to the lord in return for protection and the right to work the land for their subsistence. The feudal system was a robust institution that survived for centuries, providing stability during times of frequent wars and political turmoil. However, this system also inherently limited social mobility and economic advancement, with the vast majority of the population living in rural areas with little access to education or opportunity to improve their social status. The long-lasting societal structures established by feudalism would later shape the distribution of wealth and power during the Industrial Revolution. In the last few centuries leading up to the Industrial Revolution, there were stirrings of change. In England, for example, the enclosure movement saw the consolidation of small strips of land into larger, privately owned agricultural units, disrupting traditional communal farming practices. Additionally, the scientific revolution of the 16th and 17th centuries began to challenge conventional wisdom and kindle the spirit of inquiry and experimentation that would soon ignite the spark of the Industrial Revolution. The pre-industrial era was a time of slow-paced, but continuous change and adaptation. The practices, knowledge, and societal structures developed during this era set the stage for the unprecedented transformation that was about to come. The seeds of industrialization were sown in these fertile, pre-industrial soils, and when they finally sprouted, they would forever change the course of human history. The Agricultural Revolution. As the 18th century dawned in Europe, a remarkable series of improvements in agricultural methods began to alter the landscape and economy of the continent. Known as the Agricultural Revolution, this transformative period saw innovations that challenged traditional farming methods, resulting in increased efficiency, productivity, and, in turn, profound societal shifts. One such innovation was the concept of crop rotation. For centuries, the dominant system had been the two-field or three-field system, where one field was left fallow or unplanted to allow it to recover its fertility. However, during the Agricultural Revolution, the four-field crop rotation system came into widespread use, particularly in Britain. This system involved the planting of wheat, turnips, barley, and clover sequentially. Each crop served a different function. Wheat and barley were cash crops. Turnips provided food for livestock, and clover revitalized the soil with nitrogen. This constant cycle not only increased the productivity of the land, but also allowed for year-round grazing of livestock, thereby boosting meat and dairy production. Another major change was the enclosure movement. Prior to this, common lands were utilized by all members of a community for grazing livestock and growing crops. However, as landowners began to understand the benefits of intensive, specialized farming, they started enclosing lands, consolidating smaller strips into larger agricultural units. While the enclosure movement led to increased productivity and agricultural efficiency, it also displaced many peasant farmers who became a new class of agricultural laborers or moved to rapidly industrializing cities seeking employment. Selective breeding, sometimes referred to as animal husbandry, also played a significant role in the agricultural revolution. Pioneered by individuals like Robert Bakewell, selective breeding involved choosing specific animals with desired traits to breed for the next generation. Through selective breeding, livestock became larger, matured faster, and were more productive, increasing the supply of meat, wool, and milk. The effects of these innovations were profound. The increased productivity led to surpluses in food production, which in turn led to a decrease in food prices. For the first time, a laboring family could afford a diet with a modicum of meat and dairy, previously considered luxury items. The increased food supply also supported a rapidly growing population. Europe experienced a population explosion during the 18th and 19th centuries. Between 1700 and 1800, Europe's population rose from about 120 million to approximately 190 million. The burgeoning population provided a large labor pool, a key ingredient for the rise of industrial manufacturing. Additionally, the surplus of food and decrease in food prices allowed for the sustenance of a growing urban population. This urbanization was a key factor in the Industrial Revolution, as people were concentrated in cities where factories were located, creating a ready labor force. It also stimulated demand for goods, further driving industrialization. However, it's important to remember that the benefits of the agricultural revolution were not evenly distributed. Many traditional farmers were dispossessed and forced into a life of labor, either in the remaining agricultural sectors or in the factories burgeoning in the cities. This created a new working class that would be at the forefront of the societal transformations that characterized the Industrial Revolution. Birth of the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution, a period of rapid industrialization from the mid-18th to mid-19th centuries, began in Great Britain and spread across the world. Marked by the transition from manual labor to mechanized production, the advent of new manufacturing processes transformed every aspect of society, from daily life to international relations. This was a time of revolutionary inventions and technological innovations. Among the first sectors to be industrialized was the textile industry. Previously, textiles were primarily produced in people's homes, a system known as the cottage industry or domestic system. However, several key inventions dramatically increased the efficiency and scale of textile production. One such breakthrough was the spinning jenny, invented by James Hargreaves in 1764. This machine allowed a worker to spin multiple threads simultaneously, significantly speeding up the production process. Another crucial invention was the power loom, introduced by Edmund Cartwright in 1784, which mechanized the process of weaving cloth. The power loom was much faster than hand weaving, allowing textile mills to produce cloth at unprecedented rates. Another key innovation that heralded the birth of the Industrial Revolution was the development of machines powered by steam. The pivotal invention was the steam engine, which had profound implications across industries. Initially, early models of steam engines, like the Newcomen engine, were primarily used for pumping water out of mines. However, it was James Watt's improved design, patented in 1769, that truly unlocked the potential of steam power. Watt's steam engine was efficient, reliable, and versatile. It became the driving force behind the Industrial Revolution, powering everything from textile mills to breweries. Its most profound impact came when it was used to power locomotives and ships, revolutionizing transportation. The significance of coal in the Industrial Revolution cannot be overstated. It was the fuel that powered the steam engines, heated homes, and smelted iron. Coal was abundant in Britain and easily accessible, particularly with the development of canals and improved road networks. The mining of coal became a major industry, and the demand for it helped drive the technological innovations of the era. The iron industry also played a pivotal role in the Industrial Revolution. Iron was crucial for constructing machines, engines, and buildings. However, traditional methods of producing iron were laborious and inefficient. The introduction of new techniques like coke smelting, pioneered by Abraham Darby, transformed the iron industry. Coke, a derivative of coal, was used to smelt iron ore, resulting in a better quality of iron at a faster rate. This increased availability of affordable, high-quality iron further propelled industrial development. The convergence of these elements, the mechanization of the textile industry, the advent of steam power, the exploitation of coal, and the innovations in the iron industry, marked the birth of the Industrial Revolution. In a relatively short span of time, they fundamentally transformed Britain from a land of small towns and farms into an industrial powerhouse. The ripple effects of this transformation extended beyond Britain, altering the course of human history and setting the stage for the modern industrial world we live in today. The impact of the Industrial Revolution continues to resonate, a testament to the enduring power of human ingenuity and technological innovation. Spread of the Industrial Revolution. The genesis of the Industrial Revolution in Britain was a transformative force that fundamentally reshaped the world's economic and societal landscapes. However, Britain was not the only nation to embrace industrialization. The benefits of increased productivity and economic growth catalyzed the diffusion of these revolutionary ideas and technologies to Europe and North America, and subsequently across the globe. By the early 19th century, the Industrial Revolution had firmly taken root in Western Europe, especially in countries such as France, Belgium, and Germany. Despite the social upheaval caused by the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars, France made significant strides in industrialization. Key industries included textiles, iron, and steel, aided by a network of canals, and later, railroads. Notable French inventions include the Jacquard loom, an automated programmable loom introduced by Joseph-Marie Jacquard in 1804, which revolutionized textile production. Belgium was the first country on the European continent to fully embrace industrialization, driven by a strong mining sector, a prosperous textile industry, and significant technological innovation. The establishment of the world's first multinational company, the Société Générale de Belgique, in 1822 marked a pivotal moment in Belgium's industrial development. In Germany, the Industrial Revolution began later, in the mid-19th century, but advanced rapidly once it took hold. By the turn of the 20th century, Germany had become a global leader in several key industries, including chemicals, electricals, and steel. Siemens, founded in 1847, and BASF, founded in 1865, remain industry giants to this day. Across the Atlantic, the United States was also undergoing its own industrial revolution. While the U.S. was initially slower to industrialize than Europe, the introduction of the cotton gin by Eli Whitney in 1793 dramatically transformed the cotton industry, making cotton a profitable crop and fueling the economy of the southern states. In the North, the textile industry flourished, with the first American textile mill established in Rhode Island in 1790 by Samuel Slater. Meanwhile, the invention of the telegraph by Samuel Morse in 1844 and the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad in 1869 accelerated the spread of information and the transportation of goods across the vast nation, effectively uniting the East and West coasts. The mass production techniques pioneered by Eli Whitney and later by Henry Ford revolutionized manufacturing processes and set the stage for the rise of consumer culture. Global trade and colonization played a significant role in the spread of the Industrial Revolution. The colonial powers, particularly Britain, France, and later the United States, had access to vast amounts of raw materials from their colonies, fueling their domestic industries. The expansion of global trade networks facilitated the movement of goods, people, and ideas, thereby contributing to the spread of industrialization. Moreover, industrialization itself spurred imperialism and colonization, as the need for raw materials, markets for finished goods, and strategic advantages over rival powers often drove expansionist policies. As a consequence, the Industrial Revolution played a significant role in shaping the geopolitical landscape of the 19th and 20th centuries. Life during the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution brought about unparalleled economic growth and technological advancements, fundamentally transforming societies. However, these changes also came at a substantial human cost. The lived experiences of those who toiled in the factories, mines, and rapidly expanding cities reveal a complex narrative of progress and suffering. Factories and mines became the new workplaces for many, symbolizing the transition from an agrarian to an industrial society. Workers were subject to harsh conditions, with long hours, low wages, and dangerous working environments. The factory system was characterized by its rigorous discipline, demanding punctuality and constant supervision. The workday could last up to 14 hours, with few breaks. Machinery was often dangerous, resulting in frequent accidents, and the air filled with dust and chemicals took a toll on workers' health. In the mines, conditions were even worse. Miners worked in extremely dangerous conditions, often in tight spaces, and were at constant risk of fatal accidents due to collapses, gas explosions, and flooding. The air in the mines was thick with coal dust, leading to chronic respiratory issues, famously known as black lung. As industries grew, they attracted vast numbers of people to urban areas, leading to rapid urbanization. Cities expanded haphazardly, with little planning or regard for sanitation. Living conditions were deplorable, with families often crammed into single-room tenements in densely packed slums. Clean water and sanitation were scarce, leading to frequent outbreaks of disease. The rapid urbanization, coupled with poor living conditions, created a breeding ground for cholera, typhus, and other infectious diseases. Women and children formed a significant part of the industrial workforce. Women often worked in the textile factories, where they were subjected to the same grueling conditions as men, but were usually paid less. Their dual burden of work and family responsibilities resulted in a particularly challenging existence. Child labor was rampant during the Industrial Revolution. Children as young as 6 were employed in factories and mines, attracted by their smaller size and lower wages. They performed dangerous tasks and were exposed to the same hazardous conditions as adult workers. In mines, children often worked as trappers, opening and closing ventilation doors, or as hurriers, pulling heavy carts of coal. In factories, they worked amongst the machinery, their small hands deemed ideal for fixing jams or cleaning equipment. The Industrial Revolution also saw significant changes in social structures and the emergence of new social classes. The gap between the rich and the poor widened, leading to stark social and economic inequalities that provoked social tension and ultimately spurred labor movements and social reforms. Economic theories and the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution not only transformed the world's economic landscape, but also gave birth to new economic theories and concepts, shaping the discourse on wealth, labor, and the structure of society. At the heart of this was capitalism, but the period also witnessed the emergence of socialism and Marxism as potent counter-narratives. Central to these theories was the concept of laissez-faire economics, a philosophy that had profound implications for the functioning of economies. Capitalism was the driving force of the Industrial Revolution. Emerging from mercantilism, it was characterized by private ownership of the means of production, free markets, and the profit motive. Industrial capitalists, who owned the factories, machines, and other resources, sought to maximize profits by increasing productivity and reducing costs, often at the expense of workers' wages and working conditions. The Industrial Revolution also saw the rise of finance capitalism, with the establishment of stock exchanges and the development of banking systems. Wealth was increasingly concentrated in the hands of a capitalist class, leading to a widening gap between the rich and the poor, and growing social and economic inequalities. In response to the inequities of capitalism, socialism emerged as a powerful ideological alternative. Socialists argued for the collective or governmental ownership of the means of production, advocating for the equitable distribution of wealth. They saw capitalism as inherently exploitative, believing it to be responsible for the abject living and working conditions of the working class. The most influential critique of capitalism came from Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. In the Communist Manifesto, 1848, and Das Kapital, 1867 to 1883, Marx and Engels laid out their analysis of capitalism and their vision for a communist society. Marx's concept of historical materialism, his analysis of capitalism as a system of class struggle, and his belief in the inevitable proletarian revolution that would overthrow capitalism and usher in a classless society, form the core of Marxism. The laissez-faire philosophy, meaning let do or leave alone, was another critical economic concept that emerged during this period. Advocated by economists like Adam Smith and David Ricardo, it argued for minimal governmental intervention in the economy. They believed that the invisible hand of the free market would naturally regulate the economy, ensuring efficiency and prosperity. Smith's The Wealth of Nations, 1776, is considered a foundational text in classical economics. It expounded upon the virtues of self-interest, competition, and free trade. Ricardo's principle of comparative advantage, which argued that nations should specialize in producing goods they can make most efficiently and trade for others, became a cornerstone of free trade doctrine. However, the harsh realities of the Industrial Revolution prompted a revaluation of laissez-faire principles. The stark social inequalities and exploitative working conditions led to calls for government intervention to protect workers and regulate economic activities. This ultimately laid the foundation for the development of the welfare state and labor rights, challenging the unfettered capitalism advocated by laissez-faire economics. Industrial Revolution and Imperialism. The Industrial Revolution and the rise of imperialism were two defining phenomena of the 19th century that were closely intertwined. The economic changes spurred by industrialization had profound implications for the geopolitical landscape, driving the expansion of European empires and profoundly impacting non-industrialized societies worldwide. The link between the Industrial Revolution and imperialism was multifaceted. One of the key factors was the industrialized nations' insatiable need for raw materials to fuel their factories. Cotton, rubber, oil, coal, and various metals became essential for maintaining and expanding industrial production. These materials were often sourced from the colonies, where they could be extracted at a lower cost, due to the availability of cheap labor and the lack of regulations. For instance, British textile mills depended on cotton imported from American plantations, while the rubber needed for various industries was harvested from colonies in Africa and Asia. In addition to raw materials, industrialized nations also needed markets to sell their manufactured goods. The colonies provided captive markets, where the colonial powers could sell their products without competition from other industrialized nations. This boosted the economies of the colonial powers while often undermining local industries in the colonies, fostering a cycle of economic dependency. Moreover, the technological advancements of the Industrial Revolution gave industrialized nations a military advantage, allowing them to exert their control over non-industrialized societies. The development of steamships and railways facilitated the movement of troops and goods across vast distances, while advancements in weaponry, such as the machine gun, gave European armies a significant advantage over their colonial adversaries. The impact of the Industrial Revolution on non-industrialized societies was profound and complex. On one hand, it brought about unprecedented changes in these societies, integrating them into the global economy, introducing new technologies, and often improving infrastructure. On the other hand, it also led to economic exploitation, cultural disruption, and political subjugation. The economic structures of colonized societies were often altered to serve the needs of the colonial powers. Traditional industries were frequently disrupted, and societies were reoriented towards the production of raw materials for export. This could lead to economic monocultures, with economies dependent on a single export commodity, making them vulnerable to price fluctuations and economic shocks. Culturally, imperialism often involved the imposition of Western values, norms, and ways of life, leading to the erosion of local cultures and traditions. The introduction of Western education and Christian missions played a significant role in this cultural transformation. Politically, colonial rule often involved the dismantling of local power structures and the imposition of foreign administration. This could lead to political instability and social tensions, the effects of which continue to be felt in many post-colonial societies today. Technological advances. The Industrial Revolution was, at its heart, a period of astonishing technological change. Innovations in transportation and communication, along with numerous scientific discoveries, transformed societies, economies, and cultures, shrinking the world in unprecedented ways and setting the course for the modern era. One of the defining features of the Industrial Revolution was the evolution of transportation. Central to this was the development of the steam engine by inventors such as Thomas Newcomen and James Watt. This revolutionary technology not only powered factories but also revolutionized travel. Steam-powered locomotives and ships could move goods and people faster, cheaper, and over longer distances than ever before. The railway became the symbol of the new age, connecting cities, towns, and even countries, facilitating the movement of raw materials, goods, and people. The building of railway lines was an engineering marvel in itself, requiring extensive infrastructure and offering employment to thousands. In Britain, the period from 1830 to 1850 is often referred to as railway mania due to the rapid growth of the railway network. The steamship had a similarly transformative impact on sea travel. It reduced the time and cost of transporting goods and people across oceans, expanding international trade and facilitating the movement of immigrants. The opening of the Suez Canal in 1869, made possible by steamships, shortened the sea route from Europe to Asia, enhancing the strategic and commercial importance of the canal. Parallel to the changes in transportation were revolutionary developments in communication. The invention of the telegraph by Samuel Morse in 1837 enabled messages to be sent rapidly across great distances, changing the pace and nature of both personal communication and business. This Victorian internet knit the world together in a way that was unimaginable just a few decades earlier. The telephone, patented by Alexander Graham Bell in 1876, further transformed communication. For the first time, human voices could be transmitted over long distances, shrinking the world even further and enabling an unprecedented immediacy in communication. These technological advances were underpinned by a surge of scientific discoveries and innovations. Breakthroughs in understanding electricity led to the development of electric power, which would become the cornerstone of the Second Industrial Revolution in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Innovations in chemistry, such as the development of synthetic dyes, transformed industries and daily life. The application of scientific principles to industrial processes led to increased efficiency and productivity, marking the evolution from empirical tinkering to systematic research and development. The Second Industrial Revolution. The Second Industrial Revolution, also referred to as the Technological Revolution, was a period of rapid industrial development, primarily in the final third of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th. While the First Industrial Revolution was marked by the mechanization of textile production and the development of steam power, the Second Industrial Revolution was characterized by the widespread adoption of electricity, steel production, petroleum use, and notable advancements such as the automobile and the airplane. These innovations had profound implications on society and global events. The shift to electricity as a source of power was a major hallmark of this period. The pioneering work of inventors like Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla led to the development of practical systems for generating and distributing electrical power. The electric light bulb, the electric power industry, and the electric motor dramatically changed home life, manufacturing processes, and transportation. Electrification allowed factories to grow larger, increasing their scale of production and enabling more specialized labor. For the first time, work and life were less bound by the natural rhythms of daylight and seasons, enabling a 24/7 industrial production cycle and lighting up cities at night. During this period, the steel industry also underwent significant expansion, driven by the Bessemer process and later open hearth methods. Steel, being stronger and more flexible than iron, greatly increased the scope and scale of engineering and construction projects. The expansion of railways, the construction of bridges and buildings, and the emergence of large steamships and eventually skyscrapers were all made possible by the availability of large quantities of cheap steel. The petroleum industry also came into its own during this time, following the drilling of the first commercial oil well by Edwin Drake in 1859. The development of the internal combustion engine and the rise of the automobile industry dramatically increased the demand for oil, making it one of the world's most important resources. Petroleum transformed transportation, and its derivative products, such as kerosene and later plastics, became integral to modern life. In terms of technological advancements, the period is perhaps best known for the development of the automobile and the airplane. The work of inventors such as Carl Benz and Henry Ford led to the development of the modern car, while Orville and Wilbur Wright's first powered flight in 1903 marked the birth of aviation. These innovations transformed transportation, reshaping cities, commerce, and leisure, and opening up new possibilities for travel and exploration. The influence of the Second Industrial Revolution on society and world events was profound. It created enormous wealth, but also exacerbated social inequalities, leading to social and political unrest and the rise of powerful labor movements. The availability of new technologies and resources played a significant role in the geopolitical tensions of the period, contributing to the scramble for colonies and eventually, the two world wars. The vast increase in productivity and technological innovation of the Second Industrial Revolution set the stage for the modern world, leaving an indelible imprint on virtually every aspect of human life. The new industrialized society that emerged from this period laid the groundwork for contemporary issues such as urbanization, environmental degradation, and global inequality, making the study of this era indispensable to understanding our world today. Legacy of the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution is a pivotal era in human history that fundamentally altered the fabric of society. The revolution's long-lasting effects continue to shape the economic, social, and environmental landscape in profound ways. The legacy of the Industrial Revolution is evident in the creation of the working class and labor movements, the continued technological advancement and transition to a consumer society, and the enduring social and economic changes. The environmental impact of the Industrial Revolution also marks a turning point in the relationship between human societies and the natural world. From an environmental perspective, the Industrial Revolution ushered in a new age of significant human impact on the planet. Prior to the revolution, human societies generally had local and limited effects on the environment. However, the industrialized extraction and use of fossil fuels, coupled with the unprecedented scale of production and consumption, initiated widespread environmental changes. Pollution became a hallmark of industrialized cities, with smog-filled air and contaminated water sources. The use of coal and later oil and gas contributed to the accumulation of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, laying the groundwork for the current climate change crisis. The revolution also led to rapid deforestation, soil depletion, and the extensive alteration of landscapes. In terms of social changes, one of the most profound legacies of the Industrial Revolution was the creation of the working class. With the shift from an agrarian economy to industrial production, millions of people migrated from the countryside to burgeoning cities to work in factories. This new working class experienced harsh conditions, with long hours, low wages, and dangerous working environments. Such conditions eventually led to the formation of labor movements as workers organized to demand better pay, improved working conditions, and shorter work hours. These movements mark the beginning of a long struggle for workers' rights and social justice that continues to this day. The Industrial Revolution also set the stage for the technological advancements that have defined the modern era. It marked the transition from manual and animal-based labor to machine-based manufacturing, a trend that has continued with increasing automation and digitalization. The pace of innovation that began during the Industrial Revolution has only accelerated, leading to the development of a wide range of technologies that have reshaped every aspect of life, from transportation and communication to medicine and entertainment. Furthermore, the revolution played a crucial role in the transition to a consumer society. With the rise of industrial production came the commodification of goods on an unprecedented scale. Items that had previously been handmade and relatively expensive became cheaper and more accessible, fundamentally changing consumption patterns. Advertising and department stores emerged to promote and sell these goods, cultivating a culture of consumerism that characterizes modern societies. Economically, the Industrial Revolution led to the rise of capitalism as the dominant economic system. It marked a shift from feudal and mercantilist economies based on agriculture and trade to capitalist economies based on industrial production. The concentration of wealth and power in the hands of a small industrial elite led to stark social and economic inequalities, laying the groundwork for the development of socialist and communist ideologies as alternatives to capitalism. In conclusion, the Industrial Revolution was a transformative period that reshaped the world in lasting ways. Its legacy can be seen in the environmental challenges we face, the structure of our societies and economies, our patterns of consumption, and the ongoing technological innovation that continues to drive change. As we navigate the challenges and opportunities of the 21st century, the lessons of the Industrial Revolution remain deeply relevant, offering insights into the dynamics of technological change, social transformation, and human impact on the environment. More information and facts: Industrial Revolution and cultural shifts. The Industrial Revolution was not only an economic and technological upheaval, but also a profound cultural metamorphosis. It catalyzed shifts in art, literature, music, and cultural norms that reflected and often critiqued the changing world. This period also witnessed the rise of new ideologies, transformations in family structures, and evolving attitudes toward religion and science, all of which were fundamentally shaped by the profound societal changes brought on by industrialization. Art underwent a significant transformation during the Industrial Revolution, as artists began to respond to the dramatic changes in their environment. The traditional, pastoral landscapes and historical scenes of the pre-industrial era were replaced with depictions of factories, cityscapes, and the working class. Realism emerged as a dominant artistic movement, with artists seeking to depict the world as it was, rather than idealized versions of it. Artists such as Gustave Courbet and Jean-François Millet portrayed the harsh realities of labor and the plight of the working class, bringing these scenes to the forefront of cultural consciousness. Literature also mirrored and critiqued the era's societal transformations. Authors like Charles Dickens and Elizabeth Gaskell vividly depicted the harsh conditions of urban life and industrial work, as well as the vast social inequalities that characterized the period. The industrial landscape became a backdrop for exploring themes of class, labor, and social justice. Simultaneously, Romantic writers such as William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge lamented the loss of connection with nature, reflecting a growing unease with rapid industrialization. Music during this period also saw significant changes. The development of new instruments and technologies, such as the pianoforte and the printing press, made music more accessible to the public. Additionally, the growth of cities led to the establishment of symphony orchestras and opera houses, contributing to the democratization of music previously confined to the church and the aristocracy. Cultural norms and ideologies underwent significant shifts during the Industrial Revolution. The notions of time, work, and leisure transformed with the rhythms of factory life, introducing a new regimentation to daily life. The rise of new socio-economic classes also challenged existing social hierarchies and norms, contributing to a growing sense of individualism and a decline in traditional communal and familial structures. Family structures evolved as well, largely driven by the economic changes. The nuclear family became increasingly prevalent, often separated from extended family networks due to urban migration. Simultaneously, gender roles within the family became more rigid. While men were associated with the public sphere of wage earning, women were often relegated to the private sphere of the home, although many working-class women continued to work in factories or as domestic servants. Finally, attitudes towards religion and science also saw profound shifts. The Industrial Revolution contributed to the secularization of society, as traditional religious beliefs were challenged by scientific discoveries and the harsh realities of industrial life. The period saw growing tension between faith and reason, with religious institutions often opposing scientific advancements. However, this era also saw attempts to reconcile faith with science and progress, leading to the development of new religious movements and philosophies. Industrial Revolution and public health. The Industrial Revolution, while a catalyst for economic growth and societal advancement, also precipitated a public health crisis of unparalleled magnitude. With the rapid urbanization and population density that characterized the era, diseases flourished, exposing the dire living conditions of the urban poor and ultimately giving rise to public health as a defined field of study and policy. One of the major challenges of the Industrial Revolution was the living conditions that most urban workers had to endure. The urban migration that accompanied the shift from agricultural to factory work led to overcrowded cities with insufficient housing. As a result, the working poor often lived in squalid, cramped quarters, known as slums or tenements. These settlements lacked basic sanitation, clean water, and ventilation, providing a fertile ground for the spread of disease. Epidemics of cholera, typhoid, and tuberculosis were common during this period, decimating populations in industrial cities. Diseases such as typhus, also known as factory fever, were directly linked to the unsanitary conditions in factories. Additionally, the pollution from coal-powered factories and the contamination of drinking water sources led to a myriad of health problems, from respiratory illnesses to food and waterborne diseases. The high disease rates and mortality triggered a societal awakening to the public health crisis. One of the pivotal figures in this realization was Edwin Chadwick, a social reformer who, in his 1842 report on the sanitary condition of the laboring population, linked poor living conditions to disease and death among the urban poor. His report, which advocated for improved sanitation, housing, and working conditions, was instrumental in garnering political and public support for health reforms. Public health initiatives took various forms. One of the earliest responses was the development of sanitation infrastructure, including sewage systems, clean water supply, and waste disposal. The Public Health Act of 1848 in England created a central authority for sanitation and set up local boards of health that had the power to build sewage and water supply systems. Efforts to combat the spread of disease also led to advancements in medical science. The work of physicians like John Snow, who traced a cholera outbreak in London to a contaminated water pump, contributed to the development of epidemiology and the understanding of disease transmission. The discovery of microbes and the development of vaccines in the late 19th century further provided tools to control and prevent disease spread. Workplace health regulations were another critical aspect of public health measures. Laws were passed to regulate working hours, provide safer working conditions, and prohibit child labor. These labor laws, while initially limited and unevenly enforced, marked the beginning of systematic government intervention to protect worker health. Industrial Revolution and Education. The Industrial Revolution brought about profound changes to the educational landscape. As society transformed from a predominantly agrarian model to an industrial one, the demand for a new kind of workforce arose. This necessitated the development of public education systems and changes in education for different social classes, with education becoming a catalyst for social mobility. Prior to the Industrial Revolution, education was not widely accessible. It was often a privilege reserved for the aristocracy and the affluent merchant classes. However, the revolution brought a dramatic shift in societal needs, as the emerging industries required a workforce equipped with basic literacy and numeracy skills. This initiated a shift from informal, family-centered education and apprenticeship programs towards formal, systematic, and institutionalized education. In the United Kingdom, the first major step towards universal education came with the Factory Act of 1833, which made 2 hours of education a day compulsory for children working in factories. The act also required factory owners to pay for this education. This marked the beginning of a gradual shift towards state involvement in education. By the second half of the 19th century, several countries had introduced legislation making elementary education compulsory. The Elementary Education Act of 1870 in England and Wales, for example, set the framework for schooling of all children between the ages of 5 and 12. In the United States, the public education system developed on a state-by-state basis, with Massachusetts being the first state to pass compulsory education laws in 1852. The content and structure of education also changed dramatically. Schools began to incorporate practical subjects such as reading, writing, arithmetic, and later, science and geography in their curriculum. The factory model of education emerged, characterized by standardized, age-based classrooms, time-based promotion, and a focus on rote memorization and compliance, attributes designed to prepare students for the rigors of factory work. However, the educational experiences and opportunities still varied greatly across social classes. While the affluent classes had access to higher quality education and the possibility of attending universities, education for the working classes was generally rudimentary and utilitarian. It primarily focused on imparting basic literacy and numeracy skills and preparing students for factory work. Nevertheless, the opportunity to access formal education provided a degree of social mobility, enabling some members of the working classes to improve their socioeconomic status. Education also played a key role in promoting industrialization. It fostered a populace more understanding of mechanical principles and more adaptable to the rapidly changing technological landscape. Education helped create not just a new workforce, but also a new consumer base, capable of reading advertisements and operating complex household goods. Innovators and entrepreneurs of the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution was not merely an era of impersonal technological and economic forces. It was also a time of immense individual creativity and entrepreneurship. This chapter seeks to delve into the lives of some of the key figures who played crucial roles in this transformative period. Inventors who engineered groundbreaking technologies, industrialists who capitalized on these inventions, and social reformers who sought to address the societal challenges it brought. A logical starting point is with the inventors, individuals who developed the machinery and techniques that drove the Industrial Revolution. A prime example is James Watt, a Scottish inventor whose improvements to the steam engine in 1765 made it a viable source of power for factories and transportation. Watt's steam engine was one of the pivotal inventions of the era, powering the mechanized production that defined the Industrial Revolution. Similarly, Sir Richard Arkwright, dubbed the father of the Industrial Revolution, was instrumental in the development of the factory system. Arkwright's water frame, patented in 1769, revolutionized the cotton spinning industry by allowing it to be powered by water. This invention facilitated the move from small-scale, home-based production to large-scale, factory-based production. Moving into the realm of industrialists, we find figures like Matthew Boulton, a business partner of James Watt. Boulton's Soho manufactory in Birmingham was a model of early factory organization, and he was instrumental in popularizing Watt's steam engine. His entrepreneurial acumen was vital in the commercial success of Watt's invention. In America, the industrialist Samuel Slater, known as the father of the American Industrial Revolution, played a significant role. Slater established the first successful cotton spinning mill in the U.S. in 1790, effectively bringing the Industrial Revolution across the Atlantic. Andrew Carnegie, the steel magnate, and John D. Rockefeller, the founder of Standard Oil, represent the later stages of the Industrial Revolution. They capitalized on advancements in steel production and oil refining respectively, building business empires that not only generated immense wealth, but also significantly contributed to the industrial development of the United States. However, the Industrial Revolution was not just about technological innovation and industrial growth. It also precipitated immense social challenges, which were met by a cadre of social reformers. Figures like Robert Owen, a mill owner and social reformer, sought to improve living and working conditions for workers. Owen's experimental community at New Lanark in Scotland showcased his vision of a utopian industrial society with better housing, education, and working conditions for factory workers. Similarly, in the realm of public health, Edwin Chadwick's work on sanitary conditions was instrumental in provoking legislative changes to improve living conditions for the urban poor. His 1842 report on the sanitary condition of the laboring population linked poor living conditions, disease, and mortality, and served as a catalyst for public health reform. Critiques and opposition to industrialization. As much as the Industrial Revolution was a time of unprecedented growth and development, it was not universally embraced. Many segments of society opposed the rapid changes that industrialization brought. These critiques stemmed from a diverse range of reasons. Some were rooted in economic self-interest, others in a philosophical opposition to the mechanization of life and labor, and still others in a deep concern for the social and environmental costs of industrial progress. This chapter delves into the dissenting voices that emerged during this transformative era. Arguably, the most famous critics of the Industrial Revolution were the Luddites, a group of English textile workers who actively resisted mechanization in the early 19th century. They were named after their possibly mythical leader, Ned Ludd. Driven by a fear of losing their livelihoods to machines, they resorted to direct action, smashing the textile machinery that they saw as a threat to their artisanal skills. The Luddite movement has since come to symbolize any opposition to technological progress, but their resistance was more specifically a response to economic hardship and the fear of obsolescence. From a philosophical standpoint, The Romantic poets of the era also provided a critique of the Industrial Revolution. Poets such as William Wordsworth, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and John Keats expressed a deep concern about the alienation of individuals from nature and the dehumanizing effects of industrialization. They bemoaned the loss of a simpler, more harmonious way of life, as rural landscapes were transformed into industrial towns and human labor was supplanted by machines. In works like Wordsworth's "The World is Too Much with Us," they expressed a deep yearning for a return to nature and a more spiritual, less materialistic existence. Others critiqued the social costs of industrialization. Social reformers like Friedrich Engels highlighted the dreadful living and working conditions of the working class in industrial cities. In his seminal work, The Condition of the Working Class in England, 1845, Engels provides a first-hand account of the squalor and exploitation in Manchester, a hub of the textile industry. His observations provided a powerful critique of the human costs of industrial capitalism and influenced the development of socialist thought. In addition to these critiques, there was also a range of responses from religious communities. Some saw the Industrial Revolution as a threat to religious values, as societies became more secular and the new industrial order disrupted traditional community structures. However, other religious movements, such as Methodism in Britain, adapted to these changes and provided support and community for the urban working classes. Finally, it is also worth noting the critiques that have emerged with the benefit of hindsight. Modern critics have highlighted the environmental impact of the Industrial Revolution, with the shift to fossil fuels leading to a significant increase in carbon emissions. These ecological critiques, though a product of later understanding, add another dimension to our understanding of the costs of industrialization. Comparisons of industrialization. Industrialization, as a transformative process that revolutionizes the social and economic fabric of societies, has followed different trajectories across various nations. This chapter seeks to compare these trajectories, examining the factors that shape the pace, focus, and implications of industrialization in different contexts. The comparison will center primarily on the first nations to industrialize: Britain, the United States, Germany, and Japan. Britain, as the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, naturally provides our starting point. As we've noted, the key sectors to be industrialized here were textiles and iron, spurred by inventions such as the flying shuttle, the spinning jenny, and the steam engine. The impetus for industrialization was largely market-driven, as entrepreneurs sought profit from these new technologies. The social implications were profound, including urbanization, the growth of the working class, and significant social unrest, as symbolized by the Luddite protests. The United States followed a somewhat different path. While the textile industry was also the first to industrialize, as evidenced by the success of mills in Lowell, Massachusetts, the unique factor in American industrialization was the role of the state. The American government actively encouraged industrialization through tariffs, land grants for railroads, and patents for inventors. There was also a greater focus on mechanization in agriculture, reflecting the country's vast land resources. The societal implications included a rapid westward expansion, the growth of cities, and increased immigration. Germany's industrialization process was notably later and more rapid than that of Britain or the United States. It was also more focused on heavy industry, particularly steel and chemicals, reflecting Germany's abundant coal resources. The role of the state was crucial, with Bismarck's government providing support through tariffs, investment in infrastructure, and education policies. The social implications were significant, including rapid urbanization, the growth of a socialist labor movement, and the development of an educational system focused on science and technology. Japan presents a particularly interesting case, as it is the first non-Western country to industrialize. Here, the Meiji government played a crucial role, importing Western technology and expertise to modernize the economy. The key sectors were textiles and shipbuilding, and later, steel and machinery. The social implications included major changes to the social structure, the abolition of the feudal system, and rapid urbanization. By comparing these cases, several interesting patterns emerge. The sectors that industrialized first seem to depend on the resources available: textiles in Britain and the US, heavy industry in Germany, and a mix in Japan. The role of the state also varies, from the laissez-faire approach in Britain to active involvement in the US, Germany, and particularly Japan. The social implications, while complex and varied, all include some degree of urbanization, the growth of a new working class, and social unrest. The Industrial Revolution and global inequality. The Industrial Revolution, while promoting unprecedented economic growth and societal transformation, also played a significant role in shaping global patterns of wealth and power, some of which persist to the present day. This chapter explores how the Industrial Revolution contributed to the development of global inequality, both within nations and on the international stage. First, it is essential to understand how the Industrial Revolution impacted income distribution within societies. The mechanization of labor, the rise of factories, and the creation of new industrial sectors led to a profound transformation in social structures. While this facilitated a rise in overall living standards over time, it also led to a significant wealth gap. The owners of capital, the industrialists and financiers who invested in and controlled the means of production, amassed significant wealth. Conversely, the working class, despite being essential to industrial production, often faced low wages, long hours, and precarious living conditions. Although labor movements and social reforms eventually improved working conditions and wages, the initial phase of the Industrial Revolution saw a sharp increase in income inequality within industrialized nations. On the global stage, the Industrial Revolution also played a fundamental role in shaping economic disparities. The early industrializers, primarily Western Europe and the United States, were able to reap the benefits of increased productivity and economic growth. The mechanization of manufacturing and the development of new technologies allowed these nations to produce goods more cheaply and efficiently, boosting their trade surpluses and enabling them to dominate global markets. Simultaneously, many regions of the world that did not industrialize during this period, a group often categorized as the Global South, were incorporated into the world economy as suppliers of raw materials and consumers of industrial goods. This pattern was reinforced by the process of colonization, where European powers exerted political and economic control over large parts of Africa, Asia, and the Americas. Industrial powers often structured these colonial economies to serve their interests, emphasizing the production of raw materials for export rather than fostering diverse, self-sustaining economies. This led to a global division of labor where the industrial core, the industrialized North, focused on manufacturing and services, while the agricultural periphery, the Global South, concentrated on raw material production. This division often resulted in an unequal exchange of value, with the core extracting wealth from the periphery. This dynamic is often cited as a key factor in the creation of the global North-South divide, which characterizes the economic disparity between industrialized, wealthy nations and less industrialized, poorer nations. In conclusion, the Industrial Revolution, while bringing about significant economic growth and societal transformation, also contributed to the development of marked economic inequalities. These disparities, both within societies and on a global scale, have shaped the contours of the modern world and remain central challenges for us to address. Despite the undeniable progress facilitated by the Industrial Revolution, its legacy is also a reminder of the unequal distribution of the fruits of that progress.